Welcome back to Gear and Beer. Today, my esteemed guest is Chris Rodriguez, New York City, my man. What's your borough?
The Bronx.
The Bronx.
Born in Manhattan. Yep.
That's as New York as it gets.
Pretty much.
The Bronx and Manhattan.
Yep.
Thank you for coming, dude. Appreciate it.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
You know, we're working this out, Lyndon and I, and I'm just lucky to have dudes like you and Boo and our other guests come and talk to me. So you brought some of your rig. You brought your small rig. You said you left your big studio board at the house.
I did, but this is
not small by.
This is my club rig, and now my church rig.
Okay.
Yeah, one and the same. Only because over here is the volume pedal overdrive and a Bags DI for acoustic, so
sure.
it just sort of patches into the front of the main signal stuff. So I say it's small, but when I carry it in on Sundays, it ain't small.
No, totally. But I mean, small is it's all relative. If that's the small one, it's the small one.
Yeah.
No matter what size it actually is.
It's sort of the most basic that I have now out of 3 boards.
Okay.
For overall flavor, and then acoustic, I can roll over and just have that ready.
Well, and that's definitely a cool setup, especially since you've got the Bags DI on there. But so
it sees no signal processing from the Bags.
Okay.
So it's an XLR from the house.
So it's just separate. It's just like physically on this piece.
Yeah,
of board.
but I brought this rig to sessions and used it for like gut string. So I'll bring another pedal board for electric, but this will be the rig for any sort of treated gut string stuff.
Yeah.
Just because I can hit the Bags, run it through this pedal board, and get any ambience from this M13.
Sure. You all the verbs and
any
modulation or anything.
I go lightly with it because I know they're going to take it somewhere else,
totally.
but just to get it to tape.
Right.
So this has become like a go-to direct acoustic thing. But for smaller club gigs and like church, this is great. I got everything I need. Yeah.
So in the M13, are you using overdrives from there? Or are you using the Guthrie and the VS?
Yeah, so far on this rig, the overdrives are the Guthrie Trap, the Visual Sound VS EXO, and the Friedman. And the
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, and the Friedman, it's weird because for some reason I ran out of space here, so I put the Friedman truth be told, I should just reverse these.
The volume and the...
Yeah, and put the Friedman after. But for some reason, it was sort of the evolution of this thing.
The Friedman pedal is basically like a plexi pedal, right?
It's really good, yeah.
So it's just, you can essentially run it as an amp model if you wanted to into your M13.
Yeah.
And then that way you could control your breakup.
Yeah, I've used it at super low gain, and this pedal is like really an animal. So like the presets from the company are really set up hot, but you can go there, go into the back with like a straight head screwdriver and back
switches and
back
stuff.
the governor, as it will.
Okay.
And so, because when I first got it, I went, oh, this doesn't sound anything like... I did a session with Jerry McPherson. I'm like, what is that? And it was the Friedman. So, a couple of weeks later, I was in L.A. and I went straight to Guitar Center and bought one, and then tried it at rehearsal with Loggins, and it was way too gained up. And then I called Jerry. He goes, yeah, just go into the back and...
You got to take the housing off to get to it?
No, just take the back plate off.
There's
there's like a slot for a straight head, and you can just go season a taste.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that pedal is what I'm saying is it does so much. If you really wanted to like go crazy on the front end of a super clean amp, great. If you want to back it up and hit it midway, yeah, great pedal.
Interesting, man.
Yeah.
Well, so, I tell you what, play that. Can we hear it?
Well, yeah.
I mean, we set all this crap up, right?
I mean, here's Totally Dry, but
that's just the pedal, right?
Yeah, that's just a pedal, and I mean, do we want it? That's like really tight cabinet. I can open up the cab and bring up the gain, and this is direct. Let me bring the bass down. Let me get it brighter.
It gets fuzzy.
Yeah, and that's because
cool.
The gain, like, really, if I wanted to, like, it's still super. Hold on. Now you make it tight.
Well, I guess, and we actually are. We're still hearing it through the pro reverb over here, so it's not like we're getting it unadulterated.
Right. So check it out. This is like
start.
The gain is almost off, and that's a tighter thing.
That sounds cool.
And then you can open it up. But you're right. We would not be hearing.
Yeah, because we're getting front end of this.
If we were hearing a microphone,
face.
it'd be another thing.
Yeah.
And so, it really depends. This whole rig depends on what I'm hitting. At
Totally.
church, it's a Princeton.
Oh, okay.
Actually,
I forgot to bring. It should have been right here, but it's.
But at a club gig, I'm hitting a 50-watt Category 5 combo. So all of a sudden, I'm like really messing with level and gain on all these pedals.
That Cat 5, shout out to Don Ritter. That Cat 5 is.
Big old Don.
What circuit is it supposed to be? Is it a not proprietary, but like a Category 5's own thing, or is it a modeled?
It's their own thing, but the one. So I have two. The first rig I started using with Keith Urban was 250-watt stacks, 250-watt heads called Allens, with two stand-up 212 cabs. So if you looked at the cabs, you'd think they were 412s, but 212s.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and they had Neos, so super cool.
Yeah,
good breakup. 50-watt Fender heads with a second section that kind of got you into plexi territory.
Okay, I say usually a Marshall thing.
Yeah. But I seldom used one or the other. Like live, I would always get the best clean sound out of the clean channel and just hit it with whatever pedals
Sure.
I was using. Although, like in the studio, I'll use the dirty channel.
Sure.
But for live, I prefer to hit.
Well, yeah, you switch to that second channel, and often it comes with. It comes with like volume situations. At least in my experience, second channels, even though often built for breakup, or like you got your clean channel, you got your dirty channel. I can still never get the dirty channel to sound like I want a dirty channel to sound without making it so much louder. Typically, at least in my experience, than the clean channel.
I mean, I love it, and I've had situations on tour when I've had the best of both, but preferably in a low maintenance situation, I'd like to hit clean amps with pedals, especially modulation and time-based stuff, because when it's hitting the dirt, it just sounds weird on the front end. It's too much. Yeah. So the one time I really had the best of both worlds was Kelly Clarkson, and I took out 250-watt stacks for clean left and right for stereo imaging, and then anytime there was power, it was a Marshall head, no effects, direct into a Boogie 212 cab, and I'd hit that on the choruses of every song. So like you'd hear all this sort of spacey ambient stuff on the verses, B sections, but when it came time to like lay it down for the chorus, mono crunch.
Switch over. Yeah. Okay.
And
cool.
that was sort of like, whatever, the Eric Johnson rig, that thing, that was the one time.
That's a great sound.
It's great. And with Kelly, I had the crew and all the perks,
totally,
to make it happen.
Yeah.
I did with Keith as well, but with Keith I ran stereo. But I ran
just like pedal platform.
I ran mono heads that would go into a stereo environment in the pedal board, and out to the cabinets.
So you were like running an effects loop, basically?
No, they were. Hold on. Yeah, I had this thing called a head rush, which was basically like a Bradshaw amp head switcher.
Oh, okay.
No, so I wasn't running stereo. At one time with Keith, I was running 3 heads mono into a basket weave 412 Marshall that he had. But he had real efficient speakers in there, like EV12Ls. So that was a different rig. With Kelly, it was like stereo and then mono for choruses. With Keith, I was mono, but I had multiple amp heads feeding one 412 basket weave Marshall cab with EV12Ls, which were really efficient. So like whatever I fed into it sounded great. Like you didn't get a speaker, coloration like you would with
because they're I don't know what those are rated at, but they're
100 watts.
I'd say at least 100 watts.
Think about a Marshall 412 with 412 100 watt rated speakers. It's so not Marshall. Yeah, actually,
I can't picture that. I want to hear that.
But it was an old 60s basket weave or early 70s and 60s basket weave with 412 EVLs. It was the strangest thing because, Keith was running, Bad Cats, Matchless. Those are 50 watt, the speakers are.
Which do you know which Matchless he was playing at that time?
Yeah.
I know he tracked a lot of that stuff from that era on the.
It was
the
right
DC-30.
before I joined.
Oh, okay.
But he had that.
This one?
Yeah. He had 2 DC-30s. By the time I joined, he was on Bad Cats.
Which are just very similar circuits.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure they had some kind of Bradshaw rig for him early on. So he had the Bad Cats, but he also had the first tour I did with him, he had a Fender Bassman. And he was on that
like a 57
30% of the show.
59.
Yeah, blackface. So at least mid 60s.
Blackface.
Yeah. Yeah. And
interesting.
He went to that a lot. Especially if he was on his
I never really heard that in his playing, but I've only seen him live a few times, and I don't think I saw him in that era.
No, I think if he was on his tellies, and even Les Paul Juniors, yeah, he'd be on those LP Juniors through that Bassman.
Interesting.
But he was twiddling it.
I'm just learning all the time.
He was twiddling every night.
There was that's awesome.
Yeah, there was like different amps. Eventually, he went to the 65s, which we all did. Which I still have mine, which is a slightly high-powered AC30. It's a 35 watt AC30 circuit with
it's 65 amps.
65 amps.
Is there another one called like Pure 65?
Different company, I think.
Right, but am I crazy?
I haven't heard of them.
Okay.
Yeah, 65 was.
Terry was playing one for a minute.
Really?
It was called a Pure something. You may have to unhook from my aux, but
Pure
maybe
65.
hook up to the internet and see if you can find out about
65 has a cool old logo. Peter Stroud with Sheryl Crow. He partnered. And great company, super good circuit. Low powered, didn't get much over 50 watts.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think I don't have anything. Well, I guess that Twin is over 50 watts, but oddly enough, that Twin is like half the volume of the Pro.
Isn't that weird?
I don't understand it. Someone explain that. Justin Butler's going to be on
do you
this
own
podcast,
a low powered Twin?
Explain to me which internet I should hook up to.
Oh, CDZ. ATT-CDZ
Got you.
something like that.
Clapton plays those low power twins, those 40-watt.
Tell me the name of that amp one more time.
I want to say it's like maybe it's Pure 64.
Pure 64.
I feel like I'm taking crazy
amps.
pills.
Pure 64 amps.
Okay, so there's 65 amps, and then Letary for a minute was playing Pure 64, and
Yeah, out of New York.
and I loved. I don't think I've ever heard a 65, but I confused those.
Got a Mean Streets 6L6.
Interesting. So the
65s were like the sound of Keith Urban's rig from like 2006, 2007. And going back into 2008, I think he switched back to Marshalls. Yeah. He had
I would
Marshall
switch all the time if I was Keith Urban.
Yeah.
He had Marshall JCM 800s for a long time. And he picked them because he felt they had the best clean sound.
Interesting.
Yeah. All that headroom in a JCM 800.
I've never played a JCM through a decent cabinet. I've only played them through those cabinets that in the early 2000s that came loaded with those. There's those Celestion speakers that the G12 T75s or something. They're like metal dude speakers, like made for like high breakup. They're real scoopy and like bright from all the assumed overdrive, I guess. And I could never
G12 T75s.
say it again.
G12 T75.
T7, yeah, okay. Those that's what was in this when I got it. And I don't even think there's actually any speakers in there right now. I'm going to edit that out. But but so long story short, I've never played a JCM, a good one, through any kind of a real cabinet. So I don't know what they're capable of.
Well, with a Telly or a Les Paul Jr. cranked up. Pardon me, allergies.
I'm not editing that out.
Through whatever rig he was using in 2007, Bradshaw, and I'm pretty sure it ran the gamut of Line 6 pedals and Klon Centaurs. That was, the Klons were like really starting to go through the roof. But I mean, interesting, a guy with single coils, Tellys, and Les Paul Jr.'s P90s hitting a JCM 800 totally made sense.
Interesting.
Yeah. It just like, it was the sound and is the sound of country music, but like, it just made country more arena rock and a little more, AC/DC.
Yeah.
He was kind of like
it's like a mid. It's like a moving towards mids that, a shape of mids that makes sense in a giant room. So
in a giant room,
yeah.
It speaks large. It wasn't a Telecaster with a Dynacomp hitting, anything from a Fender Deluxe to a, PV Bandit or whatever across the years. Like, it was a different thing. It was very Jeff Beck, Jimmy Page, Clapton, Ritchie Blackmore, David Gilmour, classic rock oriented approach, but still with all the chicken picking.
Right.
Insane.
Yeah.
That's the first guy I heard play that sort of Albert Lee kind of style, but like through a really revved up 100-watt amp.
That's crazy, man.
And he had Wim cabs for a while, so it really got even more Gilmour.
I don't even know what those are.
Wim cabs are sort of these 412 cabs that like Pete Townsend and Gilmour used late 60s, early 70s.
Okay.
Super high-end, cabs of the day.
Right, okay.
I
can't believe I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for a few years.
Well,
oh wow, 200-watt cab.
At one point he had 200-watt British-made late 60s high watts. So high watt 100-watt heads, essentially Marshalls that can burn but never get saturated. These amps are the ultimate pedal platform. They're the loudest it can get, but loved pedals. But he had these 412 Wim Cabs, and somehow the speaker cones.
Is the Hiwatt an original circuit, or is it a Marshall circuit?
No, Hiwatt is original circuit, and
Okay.
they were like huge competition to Jim Marshall.
Well, I know I've heard and seen so many of them. Forgive me, listeners and Mr. Rodriguez. I did not do my research on the origin of British amplification. So,
Well, so like Vox is sort of like the early British invasion. Great.
yeah, what do they call the old ones? Like candy paint, or candy something?
Candy, the mauve colored ones, which I guess John Lennon had a few, and the classic, black with the brown and gold, laced.
Yeah. The diamond.
Yeah, and I guess the next British company would have been Marshall, because John Mayall's Blues Breakers, 65, 66. That's the next thing, is the Marshall. But then shortly thereafter, or actually maybe probably right at the same time, Hiwatt was launched in a different city. Marshall was definitely London. So there's Hiwatt, and later Orange, and tons.
Was Orange 60s too, or were they 70s?
60s going into the 70s. Yeah. But those are like the classic flavors coming from that side of the pond,
That's a huge dark spot in my knowledge of amps, and which is stupid because I prefer British style amps typically, and I know nothing about them.
I think the story I heard is Hendrix was so like into brown face, black face Fenders, probably silver face as well. He was used to 6L6 clean power, that when he got to England, he actually asked Jim Marshall to like change the tubes on the power section and make them a little more forgiving at first, when he first got to England, because he was so used to playing Fender Bassmans.
Interesting. And then he was like, "No, give me that."
Which the Marshall thing is based on a Fender Bassman, but like very soon, quickly they got way into like
All the other stuff.
cranking up the Governor.
Known for today.
What was the predecessor? Was it JTM?
The JTM is 45 is like John Mayall's Blues Breakers.
Yeah.
Like that first Clapton Les Paul through a Marshall, ultimate, incredible. Yeah. But it's funny because right at that time, Hendrix is probably touring in the States with King Curtis and the Isley Brothers, so he's still playing a lot of Curtis Mayfield, clean rhythms. So he's still into like Fender Bassman kind of amps. And when he first got to England, of course they're hitting him with pedals left and right, so every day is changing. But when he first gets to England, he's like, I need these amps to be a little more silky, like for what I do, which is, isn't that great?
So would a JTM be the closest thing to the Bassman that Marshall made?
I think up to that point, like he took that circuit and figured out how to make it a tad more saturated, a tad darker when you saturate, so it's not so brittle.
Get the ice pick thing.
Yeah. So that circuit, and but I also kind of think it had to do with Clapton probably going right here to the tone knob, and I think he's intuitively tuning out all that unwanted high end, the woman tone, that he eventually. That's it, the signature, But
I like all that brightness, or I at least want to have it at the beginning to get rid of, because sometimes sometimes like it's too much, but oftentimes, especially in rooms like dead rooms full of bodies, or any time that you're in a scenario where you have to baffle, like do the things that you have to do sometimes in live situations that or like high end sucks. I want to be. I want to not have to. I'd rather roll it off most of the time and have it the one time I need it. And I just maybe it's just because I've built my whole rig. Like my versatile, I can do any gig with this rig, based on that, the matchless and the third power Princeton thing that I'm playing. But I can't do that with the Pro Reverb. In order for that Pro Reverb that you're playing through right now, in order for me to get it where I can comfortably play, the way it feels. It's too loud to play inside of anywhere. Anywhere that's not 1,000-person venue or more.
So that means it's good.
Well, no, it's good. It's good. It is good. I don't want to get fired.
Yeah. Well, I mean, age-old curse for us.
No doubt.
I mean, it's like that's the evolution of the rig. For me, it's like these days it's like, what's the most tone I can get out of a Fender Deluxe that's set up on 3? I mean, based on
my... It's a totally different rig than you would build for another scenario, I would think.
It's a different thing, that's my rig with last rig with Peter Cetera. And
with the Deluxe?
Yeah, but we're talking a big band. We're talking 7 pieces, 2 guitars, 2 keys, bass drums, the whole thing. So two Deluxes takes up a lot of range. Mm-hmm. That's more than enough guitar for that environment, Totally. So my hunt every night was to try to recreate the sounds of Lukather, Landau, the late Terry Caff.
Oh, that should be no problem.
Yeah. I'm recreating 50 years of recorded guitar through a Deluxe. So
I tell you what, I'm going to throw it to break real quick. We're going to stop down for some of our favorite sponsors. Stay tuned for these messages. We'll be right back with Chris Rodriguez.
Thank you, Norelco.
Want to take your home cooking to the next level? Need new recipe ideas or meal inspiration? Like, follow, and subscribe to Bobby Jam's Kitchen on YouTube and Instagram. At Bobby Jam's Kitchen, cook your food and eat it. Oh, man. That just sounded great in my ears.
Ooh. Sounds great acoustically.
Yeah, I like it already. You know what? Just for grins, I'm going to bring it back up.
But
do you usually keep it in standard?
Yes, I usually do.
Well, ask me a question while I tune us up to standard.
Okay, so we had just dipped our toe into the Peter Cetera waters. We were talking about your rigs for. We talked about the Keith rig. We talked about the multiple iterations of the Keith rig. We talked about the Kelly rig briefly, and you just started talking about what you're running for the Peter rig.
Well, the Peter rig.
Before we threw it to break, thanks to all of our sponsors. Welcome back to Gear and Beer.
Thank you, Land Before Time 13.
With the Cetera gig, it was always 2 electric players, and when I first got there...
And 2 keys, right?
2 keys.
That's a lot of the similar sonic...
Bass drums,
occupation.
Background vocals, at least 4 extra singers in the band besides Peter, so quite a few of the instrumentalists are, doubling up on VGBs.
Presumably you were singing in that.
Yeah, and so if one of the
you sing in everything that you've done? They would be mistaken if they didn't have you singing, but
no, I sang throughout the show, and it was like big hits, a couple of B-sides, but like with
you were always singing in the Kenny stuff, the Kenny Loggins and Friends, and the Michael McDonald and no, was the Kenny Loggins and Friends, or what? You were on that some DVD that I saw?
Yeah, it was Outside from the Redwoods.
It's like
with my hair down to here.
No, not the one that I saw.
So that might have been the one from like 3 years ago that he did it for.
Yeah, this was recently.
Yeah, Soundstage
like
up in Chicago.
Soundstage, is that what it was?
Well, originally it was done for PBS, but yeah, it eventually went to Access. Yeah.
Okay, well, I definitely saw that, and that whole show was murdering.
Yeah.
Man, I don't know how old Kenny Loggins is, but props to him for taking care of himself and still being able to sing like that.
No, he's
that's him and Michael McDonald have very rare abilities.
He's still hitting this. That's Roxanne. That's Steve Perry's Greatest Notes. Above here, you're freakish anyway, but like
that's crazy, man. Anyway, I digress. So we were talking about Peter.
That guy. That's a B, and you hear that, and you're like, well, that's unbelievable,
I don't have that.
That pure tenor, yeah.
I can sing higher than a lot of people, but I don't have that note. I also have all of my falsetto. I used to have another 2 octaves on what I have now. I think I have 3.5 octaves, and I used to have another 2.5 of falsetto that at like 22 completely disappeared, and I never got it back. I never got any of it back.
You can.
I need to consult like someone who's very expensive probably to.
And you don't have allergies like I do, and I can still do it.
I don't have allergies, except for when we were at the guitar show 2 weeks ago, and I honestly can't remember the last time I sneezed that many times.
Oh yeah,
I sneezed twice earlier, and I was like, "Oh no, I'm allergic to Chris."
I've been allergy meds for a month now. It's just been like day and night. Yeah.
Well, we'll talk after this about how to fix my voice, but
thank you, Walgreens.
So tell us again, reset, if you will, for a radio term. This is not radio, but what you were playing on the Peter Cetera gig for the most part, and if you would maybe, what size rooms were you doing with Peter?
Well, interestingly enough, it wasn't this board, but I love this SKB board that has a canvas bag. The size of it was perfect to fit in my big luggage with my show clothes and, my Levi's and whatever, and keep the bag under 50. So I started hunting for the best rig that I could get in my bag of luggage, because I knew when I got to town I had to meet a Fender Deluxe that I didn't know.
That's right. You said you were running 2 of those?
Well, not for me.
Oh, okay.
Two guys on guitars.
Oh, I see.
But each of us had a Fender Deluxe.
I see.
So it's not 2 Deluxes each.
Gotcha. It's 2 total Deluxes.
Yeah. 2 Deluxes mono, which makes a huge, humongous noise in the house. You would not believe it. I mean, it was like, it could get Zeppelin big, no problem.
That's crazy.
We had 2 Deluxes. But Tony had Tony Abrata had a smaller rig, same thing, even less real estate, because I'm carrying this thing now, for the acoustic DI. But generally, it was right in here.
Is that just a piece of... Is that a board that you put together, like a literal board?
Yeah, my brother had this little slab of, 2x4 that he fashioned off into...
It's real sturdy looking.
Yeah, and the kind of thing where I could get 3 pedals, I knew I wanted a volume pedal. I needed a little more real estate than I had in this board.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of created a little satellite board that would have volume and another DI channel for acoustic. But in front of the volume, I put the Friedman just by accident and kept it that way. So this is like even a club board. And with Gene Miller, I do a James Taylor tribute show.
With Gene Miller.
Yeah, so I have this sort of auto volume so I can like kind of a thing. And
that's cool.
So yeah, I need more signal. That kind of a thing.
That guitar's kind of low output, actually.
But it actually suits that kind of stuff. You know,
it tracks very well with effects.
You want that clean and more headroom, louder. So
hit me with that again.
Oh yeah. Sorry.
This is the M13 auto volume swell.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I use that setting with Gene live for if the pedal steel player can't make it. Half the night I'm like doing Mike Landau rhythm or like Waddy Wachtel. But I'm also trying to be a pedal steel guy throughout the night.
Yeah.
As much as I can to recreate that, early 70s Lower Canyon,
totally.
The Neil Young, Joni, that period of James Taylor stuff.
Laurel Canyon, say no more.
Yeah. So so this pedal board does it for me because do I want longer, delays? I got them. But if I want verb, I got it. If I want modulation. So I'm all, between all of that and...
But not only do you have it, but for the most part, at least... I feel like there was something, and I don't know if that's been documented, but when they first started making these, I don't feel like some of the effects made the grade, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden they started, and I don't know if there was a specific hardware or software or algorithm change.
It was particularly the M13, M9, M5. Those all came out around the same time, and they had specifically the obviously there was no IR, so there's no cab sim, there's no real amp modeling going on in those.
No, this one survived the Nashville flood. So this one died for 3 months. This particular one
came back to life.
Yeah,
it's a big bag of rice.
It went dead in May. And Joe Glazer repaired my Les Paul Jr. Deluxe, sorry, and then as far as my electronics, he said, stick it in a bag of rice. It may come back to life. He knew it would work on the guitars.
Yeah.
So I turned this thing on in October for the first time.
This past October?
No.
Oh, the October 2011?
5 months after the May 10.
Oh,
the May
2010
flood. Yeah. Back to life.
And I'm back.
Man.
Yeah. And I've been using it ever since.
It really is the Swiss Army knife of Swiss Army knives.
There's no degradation. There's nothing different. Yeah. Occasionally the window will a little flutter, and I'm like, you know what? For as long as I have it, it's unbelievable. It's just, it sounds great. Now on my big pedal board that I use for sessions, I've got the newer M13 that's got all the stuff. Mm-hmm. But I love this one for just, if I'm turning on more than delay, modulation, and reverb on top of my chain, I'm using too much stuff.
And on your pedal board, you have you're covering the things that the M13, that whole line, the M line, didn't do well, which is drive, right? The drives on those.
No, I'm not using the drives at all in the M13. Right. The drives are, but there are a few from the M13 that I do like. I like their Chandler, and their Proco Rat gets really close.
Yeah.
I guess it depends what tube amp you're hitting. Whatever you're hitting matters. I was
Definitely.
always able to make great music out of these boxes, but I did not. I did eschew the use of overdrives from the M13 early on. I kept the overdrives over here and used this for modulation and time-based effects or filters or
the synths on that. The synths
are
and the bass
great.
octaver, those are two of the best.
Bass octaver I use all the
others.
time. I'll use it as a preliminary bass part if I'm tracking a part. Like, okay, I want the bass to do this.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll keep it later, but
they're fantastic.
yeah, I my other board has a Strymon and bigger flavors and everything. So I dig that. But for Swiss Army knife and without a lot of extra bells and whistles, I love bringing this rig.
It totally makes sense that it's on there.
And if you're in a 6 or 7 piece band live, the more inside you get with the effects, the more it sounds weird. So it's cooler to keep it more, guitar sound.
Yeah.
You use the modulation for a 4-bar section of the pre-chorus or whatever. But like you're not going to live on it.
Yeah.
So
and
one of the questions that when we took a break I was saying that I kind of said I had a million questions is
just pick one, Lyndon.
It definitely is just going to be one, cuz I feel like we could talk about all of them for an hour.
We could. That's exactly what this podcast is all about. Welcome back to Gear and Beer.
Is the M13 there because you have to have that many presets? Like you have to have that many things going at your current gig? So like the last gig you said you played Blood, Sweat, and Tears, right?
Yeah.
Like, is this what you're going to take on the road with that?
I did bring this. I didn't have this extension piece that has the acoustic stuff.
Mm-hmm. I
had this SKB size, which is basically 2.5 feet long by 15 inches.
Yeah.
And what occupies most of the space is an M13. 2/3 of the space is the M13, and the other is basically a couple overdrives, a tuner, and a big one spot. But the M13 will cover delays, modulation, univibe, ring modulation, all the flavors, and long delays, spring verbs.
Were you using a lot of stuff like that on Blood, Sweat, and Tears, or were you basically maybe just reverb, maybe slapback, maybe delay? Maybe trim, even trim? Did you use anything like that?
With Blood, Sweat, and Tears, I used overdrives, and maybe I used trem from here. If I used any delay,
verb or something, maybe.
Yeah, if I used any delay, I would keep it to about 100 milliseconds, and then really mix it kind of more dry, so it's like a really good
bit of wetness.
Yeah, just enough slap to make the initial note a little fatter, but it wouldn't have been appropriate to put a delay. Echoplexes were not.
How many pieces was that band traveling with?
Back in the day, man, that was
with you.
Oh, 10 guys.
It's a lot of dudes making sounds.
Check it out.
One time.
So it was keyboards, bass, drums, 2 guitars, 4 horns, 2 trumpets, sax, bone, and the sax would vary from tenor, alto, even to soprano, depending on what the book was saying.
Probably.
And those guys played the book.
That's saying everybody on that gig you're reading out of a book.
There's a book,
a serious ass.
You
book
can't
too.
play that orchestration of "And When I Die" without that book. Those chord spreads are like, James of Nazareth. I mean, it's just like all of it is like scripted into the song. It's just beautiful,
You're basically reading all musical. You're reading a script essentially.
Yeah, but it's like the combo of jazz and blues. So it's like that their version of
It's like a musical except for like way harder.
Their version of God Bless the Child is like prepare to read, with all the dynamics and all the different levels of overdrive you're going to need.
I tell you what, it makes me just like giddy like a school child thinking about a band of pros going around reading super hard stuff out of a book like that. Like, who else is doing that? Is anybody other than Blood, Sweat, and Tears doing something like that?
Oh, I think there's
maybe like legend jazz acts.
Yeah,
but legend, and I would say legend jazz acts with non-original members.
There was heavy reading involved.
I guess it would probably be any of those.
Maybe not
acts
so much for the guitar players, though. There was a ton of reading for guitar.
Like dot reading.
Oh, insane! But including the rhythm,
get fired.
The rhythm guitar parts. The rhythm guitar parts were notated verbatim from even the guy that Steve Katz that played the original parts in 68 and 69. Those parts are dictated verbatim. Now later on they had Joe Henderson was in their band.
For real?
Shit.
For 6 months.
Really?
Joe Henderson was in their band for at least 6 months. So
that's super dope.
No, Jocko played bass for them. Mike Stern was in that band.
Wow.
So that band was like,
I had no idea.
Yeah, they were a lab band for jazz and jazz fusion.
That's a heavy band, man.
Yeah, they
Heavy list.
literally had a list of at least 200 players, 250 players that have cycled through that brand,
That's crazy,
for the last 50 years. Yeah, like
how many original members remain?
Mike Stern was in there I think it was on Jocko's recommendation. I think Jocko got Mike Stern on, and that's how they got tight, and yeah. So they've had heavy hitters through that band, and they've covered throughout, even like right after they started having all their hits, they were covering Maiden Voyage and like all these standards, on their pop records. Like, every pop record, even throughout the 70s, had like a mega thing, like
something stretchy,
like Spain or something just insane,
That's crazy.
Wild.
Yeah. Great. They always had great readers. They were always great arrangers. And the records that they had, all the top 5 hits, were incredible arrangements. Yeah. Like classical music.
Man, I wonder if Joe Henderson arranged any of the horn parts while he was
I
in the
wouldn't
band.
doubt it.
That'd be
And I wish
maybe
I
a
could
live
say the
show.
name of the album that he was involved. It was definitely around 73, and I feel like David Clayton Thomas, who sang all the hits, had left, and they were in this other interim period that was really cool and super groovy. Like everybody in the hip hop community would probably be sampling these records for like these 2 bars.
It's wild. We all forget that those dudes had to work too, and not that that's just an office job to them. Obviously, that's an amazing gig. But you think about Joe Henderson, like Serenity and Punjab. What we were just talking about, like it's a far stretch from Blood, Sweat, and Tears, but that community is related in the same way that guys who are playing heavy jazz gigs are also. I mean, who did Tim LaFave play with for a little while? That was like
Rescue Trucks.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Jay Jennings with Toby Keith.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
I think it's how
extremes
Schofield
there.
has become such a a name to a lot of people. He's played so many jam band gigs that
A-Go-Go record put him in a different category, and like the Medeski, Martin and Wood thing.
Yeah.
And it getting on those stages with like the Fish and String Cheese Incident and that whole jam band circuit, that I think that probably changed financially, at least for him.
Oh, that's a loyal
way.
fan base, man.
And
100%.
every third or fourth tune is some Charlie Parker Gillespie, nugget. So you're like, you always know where you're landing.
Like a contrafact, you mean? Or just like odes?
No, like he can venture off into this hippie blues thing that's like this Bonnaroo thing, and that whole jam band circuit, and yet he can go play the 400 or 500 seat jazz club, and it's sold out every night because they know he can.
I've not seen Schofield. I would like to get the opportunity before he, and not that he's at any risk of like stopping. He seems of good health and he's not super old and fragile looking. But what if he just decides he's done doing that? You know?
I've never seen him live. I've seen
seen
a
him
bunch of stuff on YouTube over the years, and especially over the pandemic. And I'm like, that guy live.
I saw Herbie. I saw Chick.
Yep.
I've seen Oz multiple times. I've seen Wayne multiple times.
Never seen Wayne. Love to see Wayne.
Man, it's the first time I saw him here, it was the first time using his lineup that he's used a lot lately, which that's not even true because it was Zach Danziger playing drums, but it was Kevin Scott playing bass, and Kevin's a murderer.
Oh man,
that was his literal first gig with Wayne. I think they did like a few rehearsals.
was he reading the gig?
Not really.
Yeah.
Not really. He had charts.
I've seen cats reading on Wayne gigs, which is wild if you think about it.
It
Of the nature of the
is
music.
wild, especially because there's only like, especially in the newer stuff, it's all like loops with cues that take you to
It's
a new
like
section
hand
that
signaling,
oftentimes is in a totally different meter. Like he just every now and then in the Carlock Lefebvre Krantz thing, he'll look at Keith, who will like, you know, give him a definite look, and then they do something else that seems
it's like a
virtually
motif.
out of nowhere.
It's like just a cue for a motif, and then it's like a conversation based on that motif.
I love it. I love, like, if you go back and you listen to or you find any of the recordings of Wayne Krantz with Steely Dan in the late 80s, where he's wearing like a sleeveless shirt and he's got long hair and he's like playing super aggressively, like super
He was in Randy
aggressive.
Brecker's band at the same time.
Well, that makes sense because that's pretty aggressive music as well. But like for Steely Dan, like Steely Dan's is a lot of things, and maybe it's aggressive harmonically, but like
It's
he was
more
like
blues.
playing aggressively,
Yeah.
and like not as like smooth. And I don't take that to be a negative word, but some people look at it negatively. So I mean it in no ill towards Steely Dan, my favorite band, but generally they sound smoother. And like it was like 2 years. There used to be a video, and I don't think it's on YouTube anymore. I don't know if somebody took it down or what happened, but it was Wayne Krantz playing the outro solo on Green Earrings with Steely Dan, and I think it was either 88 or 89. He was wearing like a green muscle shirt, and it doesn't sound like anything else that I've ever heard him play, any of his records.
So it's on a Steely Dan live record, right?
It's not on a record. It's
not on a record.
It's before Alive in America, which is
Weird.
Drew Zing playing guitar, and we don't even have time to go into how much I love that record.
Yeah,
But, it's actually probably a good time for me to wrap this up and say, so are you doing? Is Blood, Sweat, and Tears still happening? Are they just like
No,
on
I
hold
was just
permanently?
with them for 5 months, and then in the middle of 2019, I started playing with Terry Clark. Completely different thing.
Oh yeah, I totally forgot about that.
Total Strat and Telly gig. I'm kind of recreating Stuart Smith. That guy alone right there. Brent Mason, Stuart Smith, Kenny Greenberg guitar parts.
Yeah.
Well, really
at
single.
least it's easy.
Single coil riffs. You think it's easy, but it's not.
No,
because,
I was being sarcastic.
Yeah, no.
100% sarcasm.
Yeah. No, but the parts, when you hear Terry's records, she makes great records. The parts are insane. They're great parts. Super. It's like Keith Richards, half clean Rolling Stones, half really super grungy. And that all goes. And
That's cool.
It's really cool. It's a
I
great,
can't believe that.
fun guitar gig.
I forgot about that. I knew you were doing that. You did that for like almost a year. Right
No,
before
I
the
did it
shutdown?
for the last half of 2019. So at the front
so you
half
did it
of
for 6 months.
2019, I was Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Back half with Terry. Got married at the end of the year. to Charlotte.
Hi, Charlotte.
Congrats.
Hey, baby. And we had a great honeymoon, came home, world locked down. And so no real live gigs. I was supposed to go to L.A. with Loggins in March of 2020, and it went away in the middle of all this. So there have been some live one-offs, but they've been smaller, private. I haven't done an official, huge, publicized, paid ticket gig outside of small private gigs, since everything started.
You know that social media snafu thing that happened?
With our band, The Rise Above?
No, with I'm trying to figure out a delicate way, and I'm trying to be delicate, but I basically just knocked over the whole shelf. The tribute thing that you did, the TV thing, can you talk about that?
Charlie, well, you know what? I can't, but I said his first name. That's a lot of people.
You said half of his first name.
Yeah, I said Chuck.
Chuck Mangione is what we were talking about.
I would imagine any day now I'd be getting A-OK sign from the powers that be.
Then I tell you what, here's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Next time when you come back, which will be soon, because he doesn't live that far from me.
And it's May, what, can we even say the date?
Yeah, I don't know what it is.
It
is May 18th.
Today is the day of May. Today is May Day.
And the show you just referred to comes out next month at some point. But
okay, well, I'll tell you what. We'll have you back after that comes out, and we'll talk about that, and we'll get into a lot more. I've decided to keep these at under an hour, and we're right at our cutoff. So, Chris Rodriguez of the Bronx, New York.
Thank you, man.
Appreciate you, man.
Thank you, brother.
My dude.
My man.
Check us out, Gear and Beer Podcast on Instagram and YouTube. You're probably watching this on YouTube, but there will be audio versions available as well on all your podcast sites. So turn on your notifications and subscribe. And we got Linda McCarty over here twisting and tweaking. And everybody stay hard, keep jamming, and we'll see you. Thank you for listening to the Gear and Beer Podcast. Make sure and subscribe and turn on notifications for us. And if you haven't already, follow our Instagram and YouTube channels as well. We truly appreciate your support and ask that you please tell anyone whom you think would be interested about the Gear and Beer Podcast in order to help us grow and keep bringing in great guests from around the industry and beyond. Thanks again. Until the next episode.